biggest meetup group I've ever been to, ever presented to. Fantastic to see so many people at a meetup. So, yeah, I'm going to talk about OAuth asterisk in Ember.js with Torii and how to do that. But first, I would really like to thank the sponsors. It's really a pleasure to, it's really great to for them to finance my coming here and staying here, and also the venue and food and so on. So thank you all. Before going into the talk, I kind of have this tradition to pick my favorite tweets from last month. Yeah, I call it a tradition because it's the second time I'm doing it. And this month it was really hard to pick. The race was really fierce, and so this is one of the tweets that made it. This is the other one. This is more technical. Okay, and still not the talk. The other element of tradition is to recommend some music that I found worthwhile to recommend. Caspian is my great discovery from last year, from 2015. They are a rock band. I think officially they are categorized as post-rock, but I was never into these categories too much. The thing is that they play instrumental rock, quite heavy instrumental rock. So it's really great to work along to. Like I, for example, cannot work with music in my ears that has lyrics because I'm distracted. And this one I can really work to, and it also helps sometimes. Okay, so a big resolution of mine in 2016 is that I finally want to comprehend OAuth. I think OAuth is a thing that we have contact with like on an on and off basis, and we do it like we implement a solution, but I think, at least for me, the whole picture really eludes me still, like how all the pieces fit together, which part does what. So this year I want to comprehend it to the fullest, and this article is a really great place to start because it's really not that technical. I want to say that it's really easy to understand. So I tweeted this, when was it? 13th of January, so really at the beginning of the year, New Year resolution. And then it's still the same thread. Christopher answers me, like, assuring me that I'm not the only one who has this confusion. And so I made kind of, well, wouldn't call it a promise, but I said that whenever I speak publicly, I cannot really say authorization or authentication. They're kind of intermingled, so I will just say auth and then chew off the end of the word, so I'm not making any mistakes. I'll not stick to this promise this time. So a little bit about myself, and yeah, as Ben has already introduced me, I'm Balint Erdi, and I'm known as my full name almost everywhere except Twitter, where I'm BAAZ.
You know what Dutch is?
Do you know what that means in Dutch?
What does it mean in Dutch?
Boss.
Boss.
You're a boss.
Well, almost.
Almost.
It's with an S, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Because I get some Twitter mentions from like Dutch. Maybe that's why. Mystery solved. That's why. Okay. So yeah, and I'm the author of a book called Rock and Roll with Ember.js, which is a book to learn Ember.js for beginners. And we go through the building of an actual application which has rock and roll as its theme. And yeah, I also maintain it. I think it's the most up-to-date Ember.js book on the market. Okay, so first let's get the basics right. So authentication versus authorization. So authentication is a very ancient word, as you can see. And it's all about proving something, right? Like confirming the truth of some piece of data. And in web applications, this single piece of data is, most of the time, is an identity of a user. If I go to a website and I log in, I claim that I'm Balint Erdi, right? But I need to provide some information, and that information is a password. And so the fact that I know that secret, the password, proves that I am who I profess to be, because other people do not know this secret. That's the way authentication is done on the web. And authorization, on the other hand, is specifying like an access control to some resource. Like this usually, like authentication has to precede authorization, because the service has to know who you are to be able to grant you some control. And the common example is that if you are logged in as, for example, if I'm logged in as Balint, then I can do with Balint's data as I wish, but I cannot touch like other people's data, especially not change it. Maybe read it, but change it. Or an admin user, for example, is authorized to do everything on all of the data in the database. So if I put these two all together, then I can make up these sample sentences, like if I've authenticated myself, then I can do with my data as I please. So the first part that I've bolded is the authentication part. The second one describes the authorization, what I'm authorized to do. Or, to cite an example that is more relevant to the presentation, what I'm going to show, if I've authenticated myself against my Twitter profile, then I can authorize third party, for example, the Packet app to post to my timeline. So then the Packet app becomes authorized to post in my name on my behalf. So let's talk about OAuth. So OAuth 2.0 became more popular, I think, than OAuth 1.0, basically because OAuth 1.0 was too complicated. But OAuth 2.0 actually describes a set of user flows, and two of those user flows became widely used. So, using the same sentence as before, I can point at all the actors of this user flow. So I am one actor in this user flow is the resource owner, the user. So in the example, it's me who's sitting in front of the computer or having his phone in his hand. The other actor is the service provider. So Twitter is providing an authentication service. And the app that wants to get access to the resource that I'm the owner of is the consumer or client. And so these are the three main actors in this user flow, and there is also the access scope. Like once I have granted the consumer access to the resource I'm owning, then I also have to specify, or usually it's included already in the authorization, what that consumer is allowed to do. So in this case, Packet can just post to my timeline, probably not do anything else. So of the two popular user flows in the OAuth 2 protocol, the one that is most relevant to client-side applications, or the one that is simpler to implement, is what is called the implicit grant flow. So I'm going to explain how the implicit grant flow works. So these are the three actors, as I've said: the user, the consumer, and the service providers. And the user is still me, the consumer was the Packet app, and the service provider is Twitter. Or in our example, they are going to be, the consumer is going to be the Ember app, and the service provider is going to be Google+. I think it's called Google Identity Platform. Same thing. So it starts with the user visiting the Ember app. And then, we assume that the user needs to be authenticated for that thing to be shown in the Ember app. So then the Ember app turns to the provider, to Google+, asking, so who is this guy? And then Google+, again, pops up a little window asking the user, who are you? And that's the stage where I need to input my user username or email and password. So I say, hey, I'm Balint. And then if I authenticate myself successfully, if I provide the right password, then Google Plus tells me, like, okay, so here's the app that you visited. It wants to access to your data and do these things with it. Is that okay? Yeah, and I can say, yeah, I'm fine with that. Just granted access. So then the Google Plus, the provider, sends an access token to the Ember app, to the consumer, telling him to store this because now it's an access token that it can use to access Google services. And then the Ember app says, thanks dude, it's nice. Actually, it doesn't say that. It would be cool if it did. Come up with my own problem.
Not sure if Google is happy with it.
And then there is another extra check, like a security check, which is mostly relevant when the token is not provided right away, but still, you have to check. So, again, Ember app just asking Google if the token is still legit, so not expired, the right keys and everything. And then Google Plus says, yeah, it's fine. So at the end of this rather long user flow, I, as the user, am granted access to the application, and then I can see my data. Okay, so the second, so this was like the long flow, right? When the Ember app didn't have any information in an access token. But once this is all done successfully, then there is already a token stored. So in the previous step. So then this is much simplified. The first step is that there is this token, so the Ember app can just turn to the provider and ask it, is this token still legit? Is it still active, not expired? Hasn't been tampered with? And then the Google Plus says, well, really it was like 10 seconds ago, yes, this is really, jeez. But then, okay, it accepts it, and then the Ember app can say, okay, come on in. The token is right, it's verified, you have access to the application. And from then on, I mean, every request that goes out will contain, usually it's in the authorization header, in this access token. And then there is it. Yeah, I think you can also put it in the URL, but it's not that good because it appears in server logs and stuff like this. Okay, so that's like the theory behind all of this. Now we'll see it in practice, and to be able to see it in practice, let me say a few things about Torii, which is this Japanese gate, like the entry point to something. I think that's where the name comes from. So this project was started by Wes Torii. And so the 201 created, this is like a small firm in the US. They started to actually work on this, and there are a lot of other contributors too. The thing I want to emphasize about it is that it's really that I'm showing in the arrow, that it's really a set of clean abstractions. To me, it's really like liquid fire in the way that it just provides a handful of abstractions, and I think that initially it can be a little bit daunting to see how these pieces fit together. But once you understand it, it's really, you just enjoy like developing with them, because all these pieces fit really nicely together, and it's easy to build like anything with them if you know like what each piece does. And this library focuses on making this OAuth flow simple to implement. So there are a lot of platforms you can authenticate against. I showed in the example I showed Google Plus, but there is GitHub and Stripe, Facebook, several kinds of Facebook, Stripe, Azure. There are lots of things you can authenticate against. So the first one, so the basic Torii concepts, these clean abstractions that I mentioned. The first one is providers. These are the service providers that I've just listed. The second one is the adapters, and the third one is the session itself. We are going to see this in detail. So the providers, I've listed them. They are already predefined in Torii. So if you open the Torii library, you can see a folder with like 8 or 10 files in it. Each one implements an authentication method against the platform. Like Facebook has 2 of them already implementing in Torii. And if you want to write your own provider, you only have to implement one method called open, and this open will implement what happens if the user launches this user flow against the platform. And you should go to URL and things like this. And it must return a promise, this open method. The adapters are the glue between what the provider, the data that the provider sends back at the end of this user flow. Most often it's an access token, something else, but almost always includes an access token, and the session. So this will be stored in some way in the session, maybe stored in local storage too for further fetching. And adapters must implement 3 methods, which are open, fetch, and close. Again, we are going to see this in detail. And they too must return promises. Like promises is the basic primitive that Torii is built on. And the third one is session, the third building block. And session is opt-in. So by default, there is no session management in Torii, which means that you can use another library for managing your session, if you prefer, for example, Ember simple Auth. And what the session does is that it really persists session data, and also stores the session data during your interaction with the application. And it will just proxy all methods. So you can call methods on the session, but the session will just delegate this to the underlying adapter that you can specify. And it also contains an internal state machine, so it's really easy from templates to see the state of the session. Like you can build your templates around whether the session is already authenticated or is being authenticated, just is fetching or is opening, stuff like this. There's going to be an example for that too in the code I'm going to show. And finally, this is not a main building block of Torii, but a nice addition that it adds some methods and it does some nice things under the hood, so you don't have to write so much boilerplate. Again, I'm going to see this in detail in the code demo. So let's now start the code demo. So how visible is that from the back? Should I make it still bigger still?
I think, yeah.
It's cool? Yeah? Okay. And that's the other part. Is that good too? Much less important. It's just the application in the browser. What do we care? So, yeah, the first thing is that when you visit this application, great surprise is the application for my book. You are not allowed to see data without authenticating yourself. So let's see how that is achieved, like putting this logo there if you are not logged in and input or rendering this simple message. So there in the application template, there is on line, actually now it's 2, but it's actually 5. So on line 5, you have this session is authenticated. So if the session is already, if the user is already authenticated, then we will show a drop down the email of the user. But if they are not, then we show that Google sign-in thing. That's what you can see on the right. And it will trigger a sign-in action if somebody clicks that. So this is the sign-in method. And as I said, anything that you call on the session will be forwarded to the adapter that you call, that you specify, sorry. So in this case, this is going to be forwarded to Google Auth to bearer provider, which is included in Torii. So, and what happens is that it will start this user flow, the long user flow, against the Google platform. So let's see. I think I'm already logged in. Is there a skip? Oh no. Yes, I am. So I'm already logged in with my username and password against Google. So I just have to choose an account. So this is the part of the who are you? Yeah, I'm already logged in. I guess I haven't started. Yes, I haven't run the backend. There's something wrong.
Have you prayed to the demo gods?
No, that's the error. Oh, okay, that's because, okay. My laptop shut down like 30 minutes before the presentation for some strange reason. And so, for example, Postgres is not running. But yeah, praying to the demo gods would have solved this one too. Okay, let's try again. Yeah, now I'm logged in already because the access token was stored. So let me delete the access token so I can show you. Okay, so now here I am. I click sign in with Google. I need to choose one of the accounts. And you can see that at the end of the successful user flow, the access token was persisted by the Ember app, so it put it in local storage. So the next time I'm reloading this application, I don't have to log in again. So yeah, sorry, let's go step by step. So the first thing that I wanted to show you is that when there is no token yet, I need to sign in. So the Google OAuth 2-bearer adapter will be called in with the information that the provider Google sent back. So by definition, or sorry, by convention, all your adapters need to be placed in this folder. So the Torii adapters folder. So here I am, and this method, the open method, that if you remember on the slides, there are 3 methods that all adapters need to implement. One of them was open. Then this will be called with the authorization information that Google Plus sends back. And what I need to do is I need to extract the access token from that, and I still need to verify that token information. So if you remember on the diagram, that was the part when the Ember app asked Google, is this legit? Is this token legit? So these are this is just the check for that. This is another extra security check. And then, if all goes well, then I persist this token and I create a session. And a very important thing is that whatever you return from the adapter is going to be written in the session object. So again, skipping this is the call to the backend. So I'm saying, let me start a session. Please send me back the user too. And so the backend, the Rails application that I launched a few moments ago, will send back the session and the user. And what I can do is that I just create records in the Ember data store. Now this is the most important part. So at the end, I return the access token and the user object. So from that point on, these will live on the session. So if you say session.access token, you are going to get the session token, the access token. If you say session.user.email, you are going to get access to the email of the user, the logged in user. And that's what I'm actually doing here. So if you go back to the template we started from, if the session is authenticated, then show this, right? Like show session.user.email. It's going to print out the email here. And so, and also provide a sign out link. And the sign out is probably the simplest of all. Because what happens for the sign out is you just call the close method on the same adapter that we have seen. This one, and what close does is that it just destroys the token. So it removes it from local storage. And then here it will take me to the index route, so the main entry point of the application. And that's it. One thing that I wanted to show is that this is how I opt in to session management with Torii. So by default, you don't have a session, you don't have session management, but if you provide a session service name, then you opt it in, and the name that you use here is going to be the name injected in the controllers and routes. So if you put foo here, then you would have had to write foo.user.email and so on. This is not relevant, so this is, I just defined this is not from Torii to be able to dry up my codes. Don't have to write colon access token everywhere. But that part is again Torii. So the providers, here is where you define the configuration for each provider. So this API key, this is public, so this is, and the redirect where you at the end of the user flow where it gets redirected. And so let's see let's see what happens when I already have a user token and I just refresh the application. So the shorter user flow, which is implemented by fetch. So let me first show the fetch. This will be very similar to open, an open method, right? Because it's mostly the same. The difference being that you have that access token, that authorization information in the token in local storage, so already stored in the application, and you don't have to go and fetch it from Google. So again, this is the check. I should refactor this probably to come from the same place. You just again check with the provider, Google in this case. This was the arrow that showed, is this token still legit? This is where this happens. And then exactly the same thing. You persist the token if everything goes well, and then you create the session, which again will have that access token and user information. So that's all good, but the one piece that is missing is you don't see this fetch defined anywhere. I mean, the call to this fetch is not defined anywhere. You sign in, you sign out, this will fetch, this will call the open and the close method, but fetch is not called from user code. And that's where the router DSL comes in. So Torii does two things under the hood. One is that it puts a check login method in your application route. So the application route will always be called when you refresh the application, when you load anything in the Ember app. And so this check login method will initiate this this authentication flow, the shorter one. And if it's authenticated, then under the hood, then it's all good, because you will have the session with all the necessary information stored inside it. You will have session is authenticated, evaluated true. If it doesn't, if it's not successful, then no problem, right? I mean, you can have applications where the main route, the application route, is not authenticated. So then it just doesn't do anything, and the session remains unauthenticated. That's not a problem. But whenever the user visits a route that should be authenticated, and the way you define this, and that's a nice piece of Torii again, is that you say in the router.js file, where you define all the routes of your application, you define some routes as authenticated routes, the ones you want to protect. And the nice thing about this is you have nested routes, it's sufficient, it's enough to just define the topmost nesting route, because all the other ones will be automatically protected. Okay, so you define this as authenticated route. So whenever the user hits one of those authenticated routes, then Torii will check if the session is already authenticated, and if not, that it will bail out. It will actually call access denied on your route. So if I visit a route which I'm not allowed to see without being authenticated, then what it will do is it will just transfer me to the topmost index route, and then I will have a chance to log in again. So probably I should add something. I should add the flash message or something explaining why I was transferred, saying you need to log in to see that route, something like that. And I think that's it. I think that I explained all the bits and pieces. So thank you very much.